Good morning, students. Welcome to today's session. So today we'll be focusing on Unit 6, titled Normative Guidelines for Public Service Delivery. So this is one of those topics that close up the whole module of Foundations of Public Administration, Public Management, and Governance. So from our previous class, we dealt with Unit 5, which was preparing us to this unit. So if you were not in class last time, please make sure that you watch Unit 5 as posted on YouTube. So Unit 5 dealt with government legitimacy, principles of administrative justice, and good governance. And that was because we wanted to ascertain the meaning and nature of government legitimacy, identify the typical criteria for determination of the level of government legitimacy. And also, we were trying to explain why and how transparency can be regarded as a prerequisite for legitimate government. So, there again, we also wanted to define accountability and also explain why it is to be regarded as a prerequisite for legitimate government, and also confirm the principles of administrative justice. So that was just the way of preparing us to this unit, because first of all, you need to understand what makes government to become legitimate, or what makes the nature of government legitimacy, because for you to understand that, it will make you see the importance of government being as public service provider, because the 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 the, the meaning of government automatically signifies its role in providing or rendering public services to the public. So it is our goal in this module to understand the gist for this unit. So in this unit, as the title says, or as the topic says, normative guidelines, automatically in your mind, you must be thinking that, okay, there must be established guidelines, norms, and standards that have been designed to ensure the effectiveness of public service delivery within government, because this is the goal. The design and the foundation of government automatically signify the importance for service delivery. That's how important it is. So any government that has ever been established, its main goal is to serve the public. And for them to be able to serve them, there must be established laws, principles, normative guidelines, and so forth that will guide public officials and politicians not to overstep their role or not to encroach on each other's territory. That's why we have three spheres of government, whereby the national government must also provide its own services, provincial government, and as well as the local government, comprising of metropolitan municipalities and your district municipalities, as well as local municipalities. So these are the chain of service delivery. So your goal is to make sure that all these are providing services within the set guidelines. So our learning outcomes that we'll be looking at here is, by the end of this unit, a student should be able to outline the main service delivery duties of the government. Very, very important, because sometimes you must understand which services the government is capable of providing. Then from there, you can draw your conclusion as to what is it that you can look for when you approach a certain government department, because government is comprises of many different ministries. You have your Ministry of Basic Education, Ministry of Higher Education and Training, and so forth. And then the list goes on and on. So the goal there is to understand which services are you looking for, so that you can be able to locate the government department that you are searching for. Again, here is that you must be able to spot the four primary functions of government, very, very important, and also ascertain the nature. The nature here we are talking about that of service delivery, because your goal here is that you want to be served as a citizen. As also, you must indicate the importance of government accountability. Same thing as we studied in Unit 5 in service delivery context. Very, very important. And we must be able to isolate ethical principles and values for inculcating a service delivery ethos, define and reveal the of morality and ethical conduct. And also, you must be able to, define the norms and values, the normative guidelines in PAM, meaning public administration and management, explain the importance of professionalism in government, and also confirm the role of codes of conduct for ethical public administration. This one, you will have to look into it in your study guide because it's a very long or a lengthy discussion of which you must know step by step what are we referring to when we say the codes of conduct for ethical public administration. And lastly, you must be able to identify key mechanisms responsible for the maintenance of ethical conduct within the South African public sector. Now, these learning outcomes might look like something that you just read just to pass by the union. Very, very important. Every or each and every learning outcome, you must make sure that you understand it, because a learning outcome means that this is what you're supposed to gain after you have studied Unit 6. So each and every outcome here is not just there for the listing, it's there for you to gain and make it your own understanding, your knowledge, so that even when you come across the exam, you are well prepared and know that what is it when you talk about normative guidelines in PEM? What is it when we talk about the nature of public service delivery? Not something that you will just make up in your mind and not understand, because every learning outcome here is for you. Very, very important. So, like we say, in each and every unit, there are always concepts that we must understand. So, the first one there that is more key, or is the key, is all about ethics. So ethics here, it says that it comes or it originates from the Greek philosophy, meaning ethos. So ethos means character. When you say something is character, it means it is stable, it does not change, whether it's in 2 a.m. in the morning or 2 p.m. during the day. So character means it does not change, meaning that the ethics that are supposed to guide public service delivery are not supposed to change, but they can just be developed to make them better, but not changing them. Developing meaning that you improve the standard of how you're supposed to do or deliver something. So again, here it says that it is the study of the nature of value concepts which are derived from specific norms and of the general principles which justify humans in applying them to everyday situation. Now, I remember in most of our classes, I'll talk about principles, and I will say that principles do not change, and that if human beings apply them the way principles are designed, then everything that they do in their situation will be as expected. But if they try to break principles as they think, principles will end up breaking them, because you don't attempt to break principles. Because those that try to attempt, for example, those that commit crime, fraud, they might think that they are breaking the law and all these things. But at the end of the day, when you look at what happens, is that the law breaks them, because they end up being arrested and taken for trial or tried in many different courtrooms. That's how life works. And even in government, when public officials and politicians attempt to 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 break principles, at the end of the day, the principles breaks them. If the people really, really follow what those principles are meant for and how they're supposed to be dealt with or applied, then someone must apply a principle to say that there's someone who committed financial misconduct or whatever it might be, fraud, corruption, and so forth. So those are some of the things. So normally when we talk about norms again, is that these are the rules or expectation that people have regarding acceptable social behavior and conduct. Like I said, that public officials must be of high conduct, in a sense that there's a certain way that a public official is supposed to behave and act. And this comes from who has trained them and who has led them, and also the kind of work that they do, because you cannot expect someone that works in the health sector to act the same as someone who works in the education sector. Very, very different public officials, but they still have to abide by the law, but their behavior might be different based on their environment or field of work. So again, when we talk about service delivery here, we're talking about the provision of essentials and other services prescribed by legislation that the public administration render to the citizen in an effective, reliable, and customer-friendly manner. So the reason why it says prescribed by legislation is because if you want to be sure of how certain public service delivery is supposed to be rendered, the only way to do that is by visiting various pieces of legislation where it will stipulate what are the roles and the responsibilities or the functions of that government departments when it comes to rendering certain services. Very, very important. And then we deal with values. Values are individual beliefs that motivate people to act and behave in a certain way. Values guide human conduct and thinking. Now, within the public space or within public administration space, what we're trying to say here is that each and every government department might have its own culture as to how things are supposed to be done within that environment. But the key thing here is to understand what is the reason for that government department to exist or for that organization, because your Department of Transport, its vision and mission is quite different from that of the Department of Health, because you see that these are two different departments and they stand for something that is completely different. But at the end of the day, their goal is to provide services to the public, and they have their own beliefs as to how best can they achieve their vision. And their mission also will be different from that which is found within the Department of Health. So these are some of the definitions or concepts that you find within the unit. So the goal, like I said here, government has the legal and moral obligation to render services to the public or to the citizens. So if the government promises to provide housing, transport, electricity, health, safety, and water, education, and so forth, each and every service that has to be provided must be articulated within a legislative framework. Why? Because this is how your government seeks to comply. And then that is why point number 2 says compliance with statutory scripts, prescripts. In other words, stipulation of national legislation is relatively easy to confirm, because once that national legislation or that provincial or law, bylaws or whatever it might be, stipulate the the process is, or how that municipality or how that provincial department or how that national government department is supposed to provide a certain service delivery, then we as people can quickly access that and see what is it that the government is doing wrong or what is it that is doing right. That is why they have to comply with all the normative guidelines, the values, the morals, and the ethics. And it's very, very difficult sometimes to do that because people don't always read the legislative framework. So that's why it's always a problem. Now, in most cases within government department or within the public service, you find that there's a culture of people trying to behave in a certain way, and this comes from their own ethics or what they believe in, and that also affect the professionalism of the public service or the public sector. And this normally is caused by certain contracts that depend on variables such as age, gender, culture, religion, educational background, and personality of individuals. The reason we say this is that someone that has been in the public sector for almost 30 years, whether it could be a male or female, because females and males, they differ in terms of their culture and religion and belief and education, personal traits. So the way they treat or behave within that space will differ very, very in broad terms. For example, the age difference, you find that someone has been there, like I said, for 30 years compared to someone who's been there for 5 years. Things, the way they perceive things, the way they approach things, the way they deal with citizens or customers won't be the same, because it might happen that someone has been working there for 30 years might see that or might perceive that the public service has remained the same for the past 30 years. Nothing has really, really improved. And then someone that has been there for 5 years, you find that they still have that energy because for them it's still new and they still want to see improvement. But this one that has seen decades of service delivery being rendered and people getting what they want, maybe, or not getting what they want, they might have a little bit difference that is not in favor of those that are still new, or they might have better view than that one that has been working there for the past 5 years, because it's all about perspective and your culture, your gender, religion, as well as your educational background. Very, very important to understand, because sometimes people are treated based on what they believe, coming from the public officials or politicians. And sometimes it also goes with who has trained them, who is their leader, or who has educated them, or which stream of science do they come from. So very, very important to understand. So this is what we want to bring in this unit here. So again, the second part of the unit, we're looking at the service delivery duties and functions of government, because here, what I can say is that your South African Constitution of the Republic, or let me just say the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa of 1996, it stipulates the roles of your national government, your provincial government, as well as your local government. For example, you can look into let's just say section 152, where it talks about the objects of local government, and then it gives you all the duties that the local government must be able to deal with in their space. So the goal there is that there must be moral obligations that guide or regulate the type of services that are supposed to be rendered within that space, or either in the national or provincial or the local sphere. But as much as that can be, we always talked about the national government being not necessarily the national government, but your parliament being the law-making body that affect how the national government operates, or the executive, and then that also affect how they communicate or cascade some of its functions to the provincial government departments. Because normally when we talk about the public service, we're talking about your national government department as well as your provincial government department. So when you talk about the service, I mean the public sector, you're referring to all three spheres of government: the national, the provincial, as well as the local government. So understand that some of the moral obligations, or some of the norms and values that we see, sometimes they do not apply to your local government, because local government is autonomous and independent on its own, yet it still has to comply with national legislations. So they have their own way of designing bylaws that can regulate their area of jurisdiction. Very, very important, because even their duties and functions might be different from that which is to be followed and executed by public institutions based on the kind of service delivery that they render at the end of the day. That is why I always say the the bylaw of a certain municipality in a certain area does not affect the next municipality because they are their own municipalities and they are autonomous and they have their own moral obligation. But the goal here is that even though they do have that, they must draw all of their moral obligations and norms and standards, all of this from your South African Constitution of 1996, because that's where most of the functions, even of the president of the country, is there, even of your National Assembly, National Council of Provinces. So all of these things are there and they are to be done according to the Constitution. So the Constitution is the supreme law. It sets the standard as to how things are supposed to be done within all government spheres. Now, the nature of public service delivery. We were talking about the importance of the nature of public service delivery because the first thing is that we want to explore the nature of public service delivery, but it's also not easy because of the interrelated issues between your spheres of government. So, for example, once you focus on the prescription for the government as far as service delivery is concerned, you'll find that in itself is not easy since service delivery obligation of every public institution are outlined in a specific legislation. Just like I said, that legislative frameworks. That's why you have your your Department of Higher Education and Training, and these are guided by Higher Education Act 101 of 1997 as amended, because at the end of the day, it also goes hand in hand with the South African Schools Act of 1996 to render education. This is a specific service or services that the Department of Basic Education has to offer. So the same thing cannot apply in the Department of Health because by certain legislative framework. Department of Transport, again, they must be guided by a certain legislative framework. So the list goes on and on and on until you get to understand that each and every ministry of government must operate within the parameters of its legislative framework. Very, very important, as I was saying. So government accountability for service delivery. Like I've always said, in the last class, we talked about the importance of accountability and why it's so important. Like we said that the accountability in simple terms simply means that the ability to account for what you've been entrusted with. At the end of the day, you are given resources, buildings, money, and all these things that you're supposed to do to render services. So at the end of the day, as a public official or as a politician, given your office, you must be able to account. So there must be someone or there must be a higher office than that of yours so that you can be held accountable for your actions and inactions. Sometimes actions are to be exposed and also inactions supposed to be exposed because sometimes people do nothing thinking that they will be saved. So in government, when you look at section 192, subsection 2, within the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, you understand that cabinet ministers are to be held accountable collectively, either individually to parliament, because that's the role of the parliament. The parliament is to account to the public. In other words, all government departments and cabinet ministers, they account to the parliament, and then the parliament accounts to us. That's why in most cases you hear people say that parliament is our house, and they are right. That is why you can go and demand that you be there to hear someone account to their actions and so forth. That's how important it is. And for example, I remember mentioning in this class that sometimes if you don't want to go to parliament and you have issues with how a certain public institution, as long as it receives money from the government, you can consult the office of the Auditor General or the Public Protector. You write a letter inform them of what's happening, and if they find it fit, they have the right to come and investigate that institution, just to make sure that what you are accusing them of is correct. And then the matter can become serious, and then can even be taken to higher authorities to expose the fallacy of that institution. Now, there are ethical principles and values for inculcating a service delivery ethos. So the first thing there is that there must be a promotion of ethical conduct within the public sector, because this is a worldwide quest. So one of the things that right now is happening is the issue that government is moving away from manual paper-based systems that they used for the past hundreds of years rendering services. Now they're saying that they want to shift into the digital space. Now, the key issue there, or the most apparent issue, is that now they must ensure digital ethics. Very, very important, because these machines can go as far as good. Sometimes it can be bad based on how people interpret national legislation through them, and how people can manipulate information, data, and to get what they want, especially in terms of, or in times of elections and so forth. People can send wrong information. They can use AI and then make it look like it is the president of the nation, and then speaking in various ways, promising the nation all kinds of things, only to find out that was not the president. It was just an AI machine, or AI being used to disguise the president's face and so forth. So those are some of the things we are busy. As for someone that is into digital governance, I'm someone that has written a lot on this, e-governance, and so forth, the digital governance and so forth. This is my area of research. So I know a lot of what's happening now. Digital trust has become the most serious thing that we are trying to promote, but we are failing because there are so many people that can hack into certain systems and tamper with how things are supposed to be. So that is why in most cases you still find government being reluctant into moving into the digital space entirely, because once something can be hacked, and then all confidential information that the government has might be exposed to the wrong people, and we might be held hostage, if that makes sense. So in most cases, since we're still within the South African context, we normally refer to these ethical principles as more important as stipulated in the Vatupili principles, meaning Vatupili principles, we talk about people first. So normally people know the common 8 Vatupili principles, but there are more than 8. I remember when we were talking about them in one of the meetings, we had about 11, if not 12 of them. But you need to check them and know them. But in our class, you can just focus on the 8, but also know that there are more than 8 right now as we speak. So public officials simply cannot interpret national legislation on their own and render certain services. That is why you always find that there are certain amendments made to a particular legislative framework and so forth. So morality and ethical conduct, very, very important, because this is where you must know how ethical behavior informs your moral conduct, because moral conduct is all about the principles of right and wrong in behavior, attitude, thinking, and the way you're supposed to treat one another. So that also guide how decisions supposed to be done, how public officials supposed to conduct themselves and act, to judge whether they're doing it in a legal way or illegal way. It's all about good or bad, acceptable or unacceptable. So it's about any judgment that requires criteria, and to evaluate something as a standard is needed. So very, very important to understand that. So This is the whole thing, normative guidelines in PEM. Normative guideline in PEM can be regarded as a collection of moral principles, norms, and values and obligations. Like I said, they are constitutional obligations as we spoke about them. For example, when you look into your Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Section 139 talks about when a municipality or a local government fails to perform its financial obligation or constitutional obligation to that level where it's like failing, then the provincial government is bound to intervene, or a provincial administrator can come and take over that municipality. It has happened in many cases where municipalities fail to really fulfill their constitutional mandate. So the provincial government will come and intervene. Same thing happens also in Section 100, whereby the provincial government fails to implement or to fulfill its constitutional mandate. And then you see the national government that is being sent to take over that provincial government. So you just need to read more and understand those. So for us also to respect this is understanding the community norms and values. These are set out in the study guide, and you also read more of the values and the norms of communities using the additional resources. So the first thing is that we must respect the religious views prevailing in the community. We know that in South Africa, most of our communities are Christian communities. Based on that, you must respect them. But according to the Constitution, they say that everybody has a right to practice whatever religion is that, which might be confusing because as a nation, you might find that the public official is of this religion. And then when you say everyone's supposed to practice whatever it is, then you find that there's a Muslim in a particular government office, and then someone is a Christian. There might be a religious and a cultural clash there because you're bringing two people that have religious beliefs. So in most countries that you see them being successful, they establish one religious culture whereby they say we are either a Muslim culture or a Christian culture, so that people are not confused into mixing all kinds of religion, because that brings even the ideas how you're supposed to treat people and also how people conduct themselves. Because once you bring someone with a different religion within a public space or within a private space, someone might be treated bad or good based on their religion. Very important, but that's something that we can argue about and so forth. So those are some of the beliefs that you need to understand. But again, there are mechanisms that can ensure ethical conduct in the public sector. So this, in most cases, we refer to them, not even in most cases. In all cases, we refer to them as Chapter 9 institutions found within the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. So all of these are there. Your public protector, Human Rights Commission. You just need to understand what is the role of the public protector and so forth. But in most cases, what we normally look for in all of these offices is that the Office of the Public Protector is an important mechanism established to safeguard society against the unprofessional and unethical conduct of the state. So what we normally say here is that the office must be accessible to all individuals and institutions. That's why I was saying that if you perceive that a particular public institution is treating people in a different or unacceptable way, you can approach the Office of the Public Protector in writing first and hear their views in terms of whether they are interested in investigating that certain institution. So the public protector has the power, as regulated by national legislation, to investigate any conduct in state affairs or the public administration in any sphere of government that is alleged or suspected to be improper or to result in any impropriety or prejudice that you as public or as the public or as a citizen you have identified or perceived. So it has to report on that conduct and take appropriate steps. That's how powerful that office of the public protector it is. So normally the public protector is given 7 years in office, and it's possible that he might be appointed by a different administrative, or for example, since your office of the president is for 5 years, it's possible that that administration of certain president might appoint a public protector, and then after 5 years, he or she still has 2 years more. So the next president might not have the benefits of appointing the public protector until they see that their term has finished. And then that will also be determined by the relevant offices that appoints the public protector and so forth. And again, we have the Human Rights Commission. This is the commission that must promote respect for human rights and assist in establishing a culture of human rights. Very, very important. But that's it for now until we meet again.